Okay, this is the time for Dharma discussion, and it's usually enriched by your questions. So I thought we might start this morning with just about a half a minute of silence. And you could think about this question. What is my question about what the Buddha taught? What's my question about how I apply that to my life? So whether you're going to ask that question or not here, less important than that you carry that question. So what questions am I having about what the Buddha taught? What I've heard, read? And what's my question about how to apply that to my life? Let's just take some moments to think about that. Okay. My teachers have said it's really good to carry questions. Questions are more important than answers. So, as you ask questions, Heather will pass around a microphone. That's for our friends that are joining us on streaming, so they can hear your question. Okay, here we go. Good.
Hi, I'm Miriam. I'm fairly new here, and I guess my main question is what do you recommend for people in beginning meditation? Like, especially, how much time do you recommend? Like an hour, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I want to go at it on two levels. The first one is it's really important to have a framework for our sitting meditation, and that framework is taking refuge, just a short prayer of why are you meditating. So in Buddhism, we're not meditating to simply feel better. We're not meditating to just have our own personal peaceful life. So the meditations are simply a tool towards something greater, shall we say. So one thing that will help meditation, no matter how much time you do it, I promise I'll get to the time piece, but no matter how long we do it, 1 minute, 20 minutes, it's very helpful to frame it in taking refuge and then doing what we call dedication. And there are a lot of prayers for that, but you could take this recitation, I think they're on the back table, and take that with you. It's quite important to framework it and to think about those, like, why am I doing this? And then any goodness I've generated by doing it, I give away to others. That's what that dedication is. So how much time is a fascinating question, but it's, and there's a million answers. I've been practicing about 23 years, and that was one of my most confusing things. Read a book that says 24-minute sessions, absolutely 24-minute session. So try that. Then Lama Michael comes, and I think it was last Sunday, he says 4 to 10 breaths, no more. Because really, you'll notice by 10, you're off the object. You know, you've chosen your breath, but you're kind of half on breathing, and then on lunch, and then on what she said, and then what I'm going to do next, and, you know, if we're honest. But the pretty consistent guide in the Mahamudra program is very short sessions, 2 to 3 minutes. So how do we do those? You can do them within a 20-minute set, let's say. So first, you just look at your life. How much can I actually consistently commit to? Consistency is important. If you do it a bunch a day and then nothing the next day, not so helpful. It's quite good. It's better even to do 5 minutes every morning, same time, same place. Quite good to have a place that you dedicate to a certain chair, and nice if you can have a Buddha statue there or something. Because then that place begins to carry the energy of only that. That also helps, just like this place carries. We just do this. So we don't, you know, do a whole bunch of other things here. So having a place, having some consistency in very short sessions. So for example, well, like this morning, you know, we had those stretch breaks. So in 20 minutes sit, you can do 2 minutes, very focused, or 10 breaths, very focused. In these next 10 breaths, I am not going to follow any thoughts but attention on the breath. Then you see you do 2 and your mind is off. So you go, oh, what Lama Michael was pointing out last week is see when your mind goes off and then go, hey, that's my capacity right now. When we don't do that, we're in danger of falling into this thing we call meditation, but it's really just kind of a spacey relaxing. It's not bad, nothing wrong with it, but we should be honest, that's what we're doing. Because calm abiding meditation is developing the skill to concentrate on the object you've chosen without wavering for as long as you wish. So they say the Dalai Lama, for example, can do this 3 hours. Not wavering off of it, not following other thoughts that come. Sure, they come, but they just float by. So it's kind of, it's not what we sometimes think in the West about meditation, that it's nice, relaxed sitting. That's good. Breathing nicely, that's good, it's helpful. But that's not calm abiding. So calm abiding is developing single-pointed concentration. When we develop that tool, it's powerful. Now, that tool alone can be used for good or bad. You could have single-pointed concentration on destroying the world, you know? So it's only the first basic tool. That's why it's very important to bookend it with your refuge and your dedication, that you're using it for the good and the freedom of all. Okay? The other thing that will help is that the Buddhist method of teaching is study, so read books. You can read books about how to meditate. You can read books about what the Buddha taught. There's all kind of beginner books in there, and intermediate and advanced. Study a little bit at a time. Doesn't have to be a whole giant course. Study, contemplate, that is, think about what you've learned here, you heard from someone, think about it, and then meditate. So it has all those components. Otherwise, we're quite confused what we're doing. Yeah. Is that helpful,
That helps
Miriam?
a lot. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question.
You can just, I think it was you next. You still have questions, Sophia?
Back there, behind.
Hi, my name is Greg, and you mentioned earlier that the best kind of compassion that we can have for ourselves is recognizing it in others. Of course, some people provide more obstacles to recognize that than others.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, whether it's been bred into them or it's their nature for whatever reason. How do we overcome those obstacles, you know,
Yeah.
to recognize that?
Yeah. Well, first we do it slowly. That's a great question, Greg. We do it slowly. It takes a while. The first step is to see your own goodness. So the first obstacle is seeing how I don't see my own goodness, how I'm critical to myself, how I might drive myself too hard, how I'm not what I call not a good coach to myself. Like when I make, a good coach, you make mistakes. They help you see them and they help you overcome them. They don't swear at you, boy, did you blow it. This is not good self-management. So we need to see the goodness in ourselves. It's not that we're making something up. We're simply recognizing our deeper nature. This is what the Buddha taught. And that it is equanimous. It is across the board. We don't, the minute we say certain groups have this goodness and others don't, we're at war, essentially. Because what are you going to do to the ones that don't? You've got to stay away from them, contain them, destroy them. This is what we do when we're lost in our ignorance. So the Buddha said there's 3 main obstacles to this. First is ignorance. And it's a deep kind of ignorance. This isn't just ignorance like I don't know what physics says now about, about the world. I don't, because I haven't read up. But it's not that kind of ignorance. It's an ignorance about the very reality that we are and that we function in. That's pretty deep. So that's why I say it takes a while. And based on that ignorance, which we could say boils down to, I'm pretty sure there's a separate me and a separate you. And based on that, we almost always, even the nicest people, and I'm really nice, and I'm really kind. You can ask my friends. Well, don't ask all of them. But even the kindest person is generally still stuck in that. And if something difficult occurs for them, they're going to default to me and my family first. It's just our training. But that training is on top of this pure, true compassion. So it's a long, difficult journey. What's based on top of that ignorance of a separate self that needs to be protected and my group is better. On top of that, then we put on what's called aversion against that we don't want and grasping over that which we want. So if you think in your life, when you grasp at something, what happens when you're really holding it tightly? It's going to change. Eventually go away or deteriorate, because all things do. So that grasping is causing suffering. And also the pushing away causes suffering, because in both of those we're trying to control the situation, which cannot be controlled. It's flowing. Things happen, right? Whether you want them to or not. Does that make sense in your life? Good things happen, you're surprised sometimes. Bad things happen, you're surprised. Why? Because this I is not in charge. So learning about what is this I is a really good first step too. So it's a long journey. But in the meantime, just trying simply, very simply for kindness towards others. When someone's too difficult, one might think of a certain brother-in-law who I dearly love, but I don't get in certain conversations with that one. I stay loving in my heart toward him, but I don't go to certain places with him. That's good. That's not aversion. That's just being skillful. So some people are too difficult, and if you can stay away a little bit, good. Because if I don't, I lose my love for him and start screaming at him. This has happened. He throws me out of his dining room. You go. And I yell back. This was years ago, but more than once. But I still love him. We see each other, we hug, we say hi. We have breakfast together quickly with my sister. And then it's like, great to see you guys. Bye-bye. And we make sure we don't talk about politics. But that's skillful. You know, it's like, oh, Zopa, that's about me, not him. Zopa can't be patient enough with Clint. Zopa can't remember her love for him. So I need to know my limits. Then I say, there they are. That's good enough. So it turns out to be about our heart. How closed are we? A Buddha, a Bodhisattva, who's a being right before Buddha, and a Buddha, they have no trouble with anyone. They love to meet the so-called difficult people because they say, wow, now I get to practice. Now it's for real. I'm not just hanging around my buddies who tell me how good I am. That makes sense?
So part of it is accepting your own limits then.
Yes, that's a very important piece. And while you accept them, to not criticize yourself for having them. That's the compassion towards self. Like, oh, poor little donkey. You shouldn't carry the load of an ox. That's one of the sayings. Don't put the load of an ox on a donkey. Sometimes I see my expectations have put this huge load on me. I'm a bodhisattva. And the next minute I'm screaming at someone in my car, you know, because they're tailgating me. That's my least favorite thing. And I try and say, may they be well, may they be happy, but I want to hurt them. So, you know, but then seeing that limit, practicing some compassion with it. Like, oh yeah, you're still learning how to be patient with everyone. Okay, good donkey. Take the big load off. You don't have to be a bodhisattva in this moment. You're not. You got the capacity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it starts at home, right here. This is home, your heart. Yeah. Good question. Thank you.
Hi, Zopa. Are we talking at some level about a division between what we are and what we do? For example, we are.
Say more.
Trying
to follow you.
We are perfect as we are. We just don't necessarily always act that way.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
And if I look at it that way, it helps me with my criticism.
Yeah.
Because we don't like what our dear president does.
Yeah, or what we even do.
But that's
On a
not
day.
necessarily what he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that comment reminds me, so this again is about we have the Buddha nature. We are the Buddha nature. We're a manifestation of the Buddha nature. So is everything. That's a really cool way to look at it. Like everything you see, everything you experience, even difficult, is there to wake you up. And so it's all just unfolding, and we can look at it like unfolding in this amazing, like, wow way, you know. And your comments remind me, because then we see ourselves not acting, not speaking kindly, gently, or even firmly when it needs to be done. We get so nice, you know. Buddha's not about being nice. Sometimes you have to say, no, you know, that doesn't work, even to help the other person. But your comment reminds me of Lama Michael saying, when a man approached Buddha Shakyamuni when he was walking on the earth, Buddha was, and the man saw, I mean, he must have appeared amazing, because all the stories are that he appeared amazingly, you know, to people. I mean, he was human, so they could see that, but it was like, wow, what's going on with that guy? And the way you could tie that to your own experience is if you've been around or seen the Dalai Lama or Khenpo Lodro Donyo or Kala Rinpoche or Bokar Rinpoche, we see someone who is appearing significantly different in their speech and behavior. And so the man came up to the Buddha and said, great question. He said, what's the difference between you and me? And the Buddha said, nothing. Therefore, pointing out, you're already perfect. Perfect is a hard word for me, but you're already awakened, you have the nature, I like good, definite goodness, they call it, some texts call it definite goodness. You are also definitely good, but the difference is I know it and you don't. I recognize it. I recognize that about myself, and you don't yet recognize that about yourself. So this step, going back to Greg's question, this step of seeing your limits but also seeing your potential is a really good step toward that recognition. Some of us can't just do it, you know, because whatever's, all the stuff, all the encrustment, it's not a word, the layers of crust, of attachment, aversion, confusion, they're thick. And as you practice, they do start softening and falling away. So then the nature shines through more. It's not that it wasn't there and now it's there, but it shines through more. In other words, there's work to do. It's not just, I wish it was like that. I'm a Buddha, you all look like Buddhists. Great, let's play. So there is some work to do. And that's why all the 84,000 teachings, they say 84,000 teachings of the Buddha. But you'll find your own way in. Some are very attracted to the calm abiding practice. Some are more attracted to study. Some are more attracted to service. Most people, it's all of those, some combination, you know, and that combination can really bring that nature forward. Back there, Heather.
This is maybe a little related. It's a question about karma or bad karma. So some traditions have this concept of like forgiveness, right? And so my thought is that your reaction to someone's bad behavior, if you like quote unquote forgive, maybe that person is imprinted with less bad karma that way.
Yeah, interesting question. Karma is so complex and so fascinating, but the Buddha taught it doesn't work that way. If you forgive someone, your karma is improved. That's your karma that's improved. The other person, of course, can be impacted dependent, you know, on your relationship, whether you tell them, whether it's a mutual, you know, there's so many. I mean, you might forgive, I forgive my father and he died when I was 28, you know. still that's got an impact on that consciousness, which is existent somewhere. But I don't change his karma. Karma just means action. And you could say, some texts go as far to say it's action and result, but it's not more than that. And action means action of body, action of speech, action of mind. So mind also gains karma. But I can't change your karma, and you can't change mine in that intricate way. I can't get in there and you change yours. But you forgiving someone will improve your mind and heart, right? You can probably feel that whenever we can reach that forgiveness. And it's not easy, because oftentimes I've practiced it, I've struggled with it a lot, and I see how many layers there are to forgiveness. There's kind of a surface layer. It's like, oh, I forgive you, but it's because I really don't want the conflict, you know? And I'm kind of surfacey, and then going deeper and deeper and deeper, and seeing perhaps when there's something to forgive, there's also something on your end to be forgiven. Because often when we're in that situation, something interrelationship has happened. And so more powerful, according to the Buddha, is look at what did I do? What did I do to sow the seeds for that? Again, I'm not responsible for what they said or did, but what was my mind doing? What was leading up to it? Were my expectations too harsh? What does my friend Tim call it? We're always imposing ourselves on situations, even when we don't see it. That, again, has many layers. I mean, there's the very brash one. We walk in and take over the conversation and take over the room. But there's more subtle ones where we try and make it go the way I want, you know? So it's seeing things on a more and more subtle level. Does that help? Yeah, good question. Really, yeah. We're in charge of our karma, just like we're in charge of our heart. That's our work, yeah.
I just have a comment related to forgiveness. I have a dear friend that has a terrible alcoholic problem. And when I look deeply at her suffering and pain, I totally forgive her, because I really understand what's going on. And she's been very cruel to me at times, but I really feel like maybe I'm fooling myself, but I really forgive her because I can see deep down the pain and suffering that she's going through with this problem of hers. And my heart just goes out to her for that.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good step towards compassion. I like to underpin that with ethics. So how does that go together? When someone's doing something harmful to themselves or others, it's not ethical. That's different than forgiving. Forgiving means I'm not going to be hard on them for that, let's say. I'm not going to be hard-hearted toward them. But there's still this suffering behavior occurring for them. Mm-hmm. And that's important that we don't conflate forgiveness with it's okay. What they do is okay. Do you see? We have to peel those apart. So it's like my 5-year-old grandson, who I was with last night. This is always this, it's such a workshop. It's just a total workshop. He's so bright, he's so funny, he's really cute. But he just acts out stuff, you know. He just, you know, last night it was, I'm not going to sit down at the dinner table, I'm going to stand on my chair. And maybe I'm going to threaten to stand on the table. And so, you know, there you are. And it's like, if I can come toward that with a sense of, and this is tied to forgiveness, of his goodness, I'm going to react really differently, but I'm still not going to let him stand up in the chair, stand on the table. So that's kind of what I call the ethical thing. It's like, so what we figured out was if you want to do that, that's different than what we're all doing, so you can be in the playroom with your food. Well, of course, he didn't want to, so he sat down, you know. So it's just a way of I don't even want to say helping. Well, maybe it is. It's kind of recognizing the person still needs assistance with just acting decently in the world. Now, if you're really close and you've been too involved, you're probably not the one to teach that to them. Like mom and dad have a harder time than Zopa because I only come once a week and I'm grandma and they listen in a certain way that they don't to mom and dad because patterns are in, you know. So, so we also have to think, forgiveness doesn't mean it's okay no matter what you do. It's not. That's really important. And that second level is more difficult because we have to get very skillful. Like again, what's my capacity? I mean, I've gotten so upset with Kai at times that here was the extreme. I put myself in timeout one time. We were all, he always does this at the dinner table. We were all at the dinner table and this whole thing happened. The 2-year-old and the mom and my son all exploded. So of course I exploded. And then I looked at them all and I said, I'm putting myself in timeout. And I don't know where it came from, but it was funny and it was perfect. And I marched down the hall and I went in the bedroom and shut the door. And I sat there going, this is hilarious. But I was also really shook up because people were yelling. And pretty soon my son came down the hall and knocked and said, can I talk? And I said, not right now, I'm not ready. But it was quiet out there. When Zopa put herself in timeout, it was quiet. So this is a joke, but it's also about capacity. That was all I could do at that moment to not add to the suffering. This is the question we have to ask skillfully over and over. Am I adding to the suffering? Had I stayed in the room, you bet I was going to add to the suffering. And instead, I just had this idea, because I was thinking, I'm going to put Kai in timeout. And I'm going to timeout. I want timeout. Give me timeout. So, you know, we can't always fix that part, but we need to hold in mind, forgiveness doesn't mean we don't get mushy about it. It's really good to have a soft heart, but it's also good to say, that's not helpful to you or me. That's not skillful, and I care about you so much. I'm gonna, you know, work with that. But most of us, the minute we get to that, we bring so much anger and so much judgment, right? I mean, it's like, I'm gonna make you be good. Yeah, well, good luck. That's adding to the suffering. We need to see it. Grandkids are perfect for it because you got enough space that you can play with it and see yourself get crazy, and they'll always give you something to work on. I'll tell you one more very helpful grandchild story with Kai again. One of the things is he's too smart for his 5-year-old self. He's always telling me how things are. And then I say to him, Kai, you're 5, because he'll tell me something that's not accurate. You know, like, Zopa, there's only 10 stars in the sky. And I say, really? And then I say, well, I don't think so. I think there's just so many we can hardly count them. I'm just making up that example, but that's kind of what he does. And then he'll say, no. He's very, very sure. And then I say, Kai, you're 5, and Zopa is 70. And Zopa's been around a lot longer. And I know some things you don't know. There are more stars than that. And he looks totally perplexed. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't quite agree with me, but it cuts the being sure of something that's inaccurate. So I'm just aiming to kind of cut the I'm certain, you know. And it's fun. We just do that. But the story I wanted to tell was about letting go, was about me learning to let go. So he got into this habit of irritating people. That's probably not what he's doing, but it's a result by standing at the light switch and turning it off, on, you know, like a million times. And so we did the usual thing, which never works. Don't do that. I'm learning, don't start there. Don't start with don't do that. That guarantees more. So we'd done that, and we started researching some things like distraction, try distraction. You know, how about we play with this toy, or we stop and read this book. That works sometimes, but he was really into this light thing. And I was in the kitchen cooking with his mom, and he started in, and it was a dark evening, so we're cooking, and the light's going like this. And I just whispered to her, because an early childhood educator had told me, the really powerful thing is pay no attention, none, and see if you can do that. This was such good practice. He did that and did that and did that. We just kept chopping with the light going off and on, and we kept stirring with the light going off and on, and we didn't look at him, and we didn't give it 1 ounce of energy. And after, it felt like forever, but I think it was probably 1.5 minutes, which is long, you know. When he looked around and he said, "Oh, okay," and he left and went and played with something else. And it was like, wow, he learned something. I don't even know what it was, and we learned something. But whatever it was, it didn't do the thing that it had been doing for him. So, you know, like the negative attention or the positive attention, it just didn't work. And he went, "Oh, okay." And he didn't do it anymore. It was like, wow. So what I'm focused on in a Buddhist practice way is what it took in that 1.5 minutes in my heart. Patience, breathing. No, don't turn into your mom and scream at him and put him in timeout. You know, just going through that and trusting something will shift here. You know, so it's the work is always here, but our habit is to go out there, right? Fix out there, criticize out there, you know. We've got Doug and who else? Oh, we can do both. Okay. Hopefully my answers will get shorter.
My name is Doug. I've just been kind of interested, I think it's been mentioned several times, you've mentioned today, sort of dealing with people you find difficult or aversive. And also mentioned at the very beginning something about sort of ego expanding or when you're sort of protecting your territory, it can kind of sort of make yourself come into focus, and being around people where everything's going well and everybody likes you, and it's been interesting to me that sometimes it feels like it almost works the opposite way, sometimes in a way that I found this about myself, that if I'm around people who like me and sort of approve of what I say, sometimes I can get the sense that I'm pretty good stuff. I really got things figured out. And then I'll run into somebody who is not at all interested in what I had to say, or disagrees, or gives me no feedback, and so I feel sort of... And I've learned, at least in certain instances, to appreciate that, so I don't get carried away with myself and to think that I'm pretty hot shit.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of playing with those two different situations. And sometimes I think there's some discernment I need to exercise, and how, how much you hang around with people make you feel good, and how much you do the opposite.
Absolutely.
So I wondered if you had a comment about that.
Yeah, you've said it. Yeah, it's good discernment. One way we can do it is displace ourselves on purpose, like, I don't know, I used to teach a class on diversity at Portland State, and one of the things I would say, it was mostly white young people, as Portland is statistically, but I would say, here's an exercise, go get on the bus downtown, stay on it all the way through Lloyd Center, watch the complexion of the people on the bus change, because around Lloyd Center, at least it used to be, more African Americans got on, and then you're headed up into what used to be the African American neighborhood, and just sit there and see how you observe your inner thoughts and feelings and come back and report on them. So if people were honest, especially white people who hadn't been around, that kind of around African American community would report some anxiety rise, some stereotypes rise, and the point was just to see them. So this displacement, which can either be on purpose, but most of us don't have to do it on purpose, life gives it to us, is in those moments to see what goes on here, And whether, sometimes, the mind training technique is always see the difficult one as a teacher. What are they teaching you? They're teaching you your limits. My brother-in-law, Kai, they're showing me my limits. That's my garden. So that's where I need to work. So they're showing me, hey, you got a bunch of weeds over here in the corner called impatience. Or you got a bunch of judging nettles over here in this row. And that's how we can work with the disagreeable. But it's not always groups we don't feel comfortable with, or a person we don't feel comfortable with. Sometimes it's your best friend. Sometimes it's your spouse. You can go through a day, and if you're honest about it, I feel good about my friend when they say that, and then they say that, I don't feel good. So you can work right there. Now they're the teacher. So bodhisattvas, they say, always want difficult situations. They crave them. Well, they don't crave anything anymore, but they wish for them, because the teachings say it's very difficult to make that last leap to the fully awakened mind, inner leap to the fully awakened mind, and you have to keep chiseling away at this gunk on top, which is our afflictions, this sense of I to be protected. So the more difficult the person is, the more they can show you and help you work on it. Thank you. Marcy, last question today.
This is on?
Yeah.
I was thinking about your description of Kai, and you talking, like, you saying that you're 70 and he's 5, and he's just sure he knows how things are. And,
yeah.
And I was wondering, it kind of made me think, because I'd been sort of thinking about this question about how my ability to hold the view of I guess it's the third noble truth of that there is a cessation of suffering, is true, is like kind of the fuel, it feels like that would be the fuel for my practice. And
if you knew you could fully wake up and be free?
No, I mean, I feel like a lot of my obstacle to practice is that I'm sort of like Kai. Like, you know, it's like I know what my mind is like, and I don't really believe that it's going to be any different.
Yeah.
Right, so I may meditate because it calms me down, because it makes me a nicer person, whatever. But on some level, and maybe it's just something I noticed more over the last, you know, couple of years of this sort of waning sense of like, really, have I really met anyone that was enlightened? Like, is, you know, like, I don't know, just like a lot of doubt.
Yeah, you said the word. I was just
Should I be like more like Kai?
Well, number one, that's a fascinating comparison. Like, I already know what my mind is like. There are only 10 stars in the sky. And therefore, I know I cannot be fully awakened. So with everything in this lineage and pretty much everywhere, but particularly the work here in the Kagyu lineage, is see that, experience it. So we won't get, how many have doubt about their Buddha nature? Look around. I'd love to find someone that said no doubt whatsoever. Actually, there are. I think some of my teachers really don't have doubt. And as a result of a lack of doubt, oh my gosh, what they create is just, I mean, without trying, you know, like monasteries full of monks and thousands of students, and over a very short time, like my teacher, Venerable Chidran, she doesn't have doubt about that. And I have lived with her for 5 years and been following her 20 years, and I have doubt. But I see it. I see the doubt. And then the trick is, just like when you're sitting in Shine, you see it, but you don't need to follow it, make it solid, believe it, extend it. And we do. So try and see the way we entertain it too much. No, I really can't do that. I've never seen that. No, I really can't do that. So do you hear it? It's a cynicism and it's a discouragement. It's really good to recognize the actual factors rising in our mind. Oh, that's doubt. And the teachings are 3 kinds of doubt. Doubt that tends toward a suffering outcome. So it's good to see that, oh, this kind of doubt tends towards a suffering outcome, because it's just thoughts. It's just your own thoughts. This set of thoughts tends towards a suffering outcome where I discourage myself, I don't practice, I feel worse. So see that, you know. And then there's the doubt in the middle that just keeps us spinning forever. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. I could do this forever. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I can be a Buddha. Maybe I can't. You know, that just doesn't go anywhere. So you see the suffering outcome of that. And then there's doubt that tends toward the end of suffering. Like, I'm not sure about this, but it's kind of like Kai to Zopa. I'm not sure, but someone 70 with a little more experience says it's possible. Maybe I should think about that. That's the Buddha. That's the teacher saying, it's possible, and you already got it, but you just don't recognize it. So you do whatever it takes to encourage yourself to move toward that doubt, towards a end of suffering. Doubt's not a problem, but those other 2, where you just spin forever, or it tends toward, I'll never make it. Which also, by the way, is being special, especially bad. The only person who does not have Buddha nature. So just explore those, but with a lightness, you know.
I think somebody important to me in my life raised the question, like, do you think that's really true? Like, are there enlightened people out there right now? And I think just the question made me realize that what I assumed I believed, or what I assumed was my view, was like I saw these cracks.
Yeah, well, that person's a teacher, and they're showing you where your cracks are, but that doesn't mean you have to go get lost in the briar patch. You've still got a good garden, Marcy. You've still got a very good garden that you've developed. Okay, good. We have to end. So let's dedicate all the effort we've made together and our positive energy we've created, and we're going to give it away to everybody else. We don't hold on.
Ooh, by this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you so much for your practice and your questions. Have a good week of practice on and off the cushion. We'll see you again.